it sounds horrible, but I'm waiting for like a chance for like challenges for somebody to like not so much slip up or get booked out for another game in some cases. I don't have the luxury like I did with First Strike, where all right, there's no chance it's going in Europe. I could do North America to earn a bit of money, get a bit of experience, just get those reps in at casting. I can't do that, so I'm just playing with my dick all day, basically watching these scenes like play out. It's heartbreaking. And it also fucks with some of the North American casters as well. Like, because I've been duoing with people like Simo and all that kind of thing. Now they need to find other duos and they're struggling to find the right people. So it's even screwing with people within their own regions.
Thank you for sticking with us after the break, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching VALORANTING, a professional ranting show, not podcast. It's a show. The big distinction is that we're in our own little boxes and there's actually people. Actually, I don't know what the difference is. Anyway, welcome back. I'm Mitch Lacey here with Vansili and Veli. So far today, we've discussed a whole bunch of stuff, roster moves in NA and EU. We talked a lot about formats. But now it's time to sink our teeth a little bit more into what has been happening across the pond. We're talking VCT, and to help us with that, it is going to be the one, the only RyanCentral. He's named like that because he is a one-stop shop for all things Ryan, and he knows a fair bit about Valorant as well. Welcome, buddy.
What's up, Ryan?
That was the weirdest intro I've ever
You're the one that's called RyanCentral. Who put Central after their first name?
It's a literal terrible username. I can accept that. I thought you were just going to say he's called that because his name is literally Ryan and he has no creative ideas. So there we go. Great start. I'm doing good though. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, likewise, man. I mean,
likewise.
For those that don't know, Ryan has been a content creator first and foremost, then also a broadcaster in esports for a while. He and I think, what was it, 2015, spun up Overwatch content creation, and I sort of diverged away from that. He stuck with it, and now obviously is a broadcaster in Valorant and a content creator, of course, with his Ken. Mate, for those that maybe don't know much about your background, feel free to add some on there and tell us what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, we started the channels within the same week, I think, back then as well, because you were doing stuff with ESL with Overdrive and stuff, and yeah, that scared the living shit out of me at that point, because I think one amongst many said the same thing, because he saw like the big studio setup that you guys had, and he was like, "Oh shit, this is gonna."
We got lucky because we had this decrepit studio upstairs with no aircon, where we were able to do, like, me and Jason were able to sit down and just honestly, there was no substance to any of the content that we created, but we wanted to establish a presence in Overwatch, and yeah, obviously we took a lot of cues from guys like Ryan and OAM who actually knew how to create content.
Yeah, that was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. 5 years of making Overwatch content. We rebranded to HitScan just before BlizzCon of last year because, truth be told, we had no idea what Overwatch 2 was going to be. We didn't know if it was going to be a new game. We didn't know if we wanted to be like Overwatch and Talon Central, right? So we were like, let's just get rid of it because we're kind of shoehorning ourselves into doing one channel. So a hit scan, we might as well be called Valorant Central at this point, to be brutally honest. So that's how
I was going to say, even in 2021, you don't even know when Overwatch 2 is coming out. So
right. I feel so bad for people like Styloso and stuff because they very much stick to their guns. And I think we'd go back to Overwatch at some point making content, but not anytime soon, because when it comes to the C-word content, there really isn't that much at the moment, but that's fine. Valorant's doing fine. And yeah, basically we got invited to the closed beta and all that stuff from doing HitScan. And I figured, I think I spoke to you about this as well, Mitch, where it's like, I didn't cast any Overwatch in the early days because I was almost like too scared to, because I was still very new to like making content and stuff. I didn't want to make that mistake again the second time around. Because I remember meeting Mitch properly at the start of the Overwatch League, and you being like, "We need casters in the future." And there's been plenty since in the Overwatch League, but there's a huge like traffic jam, a backlog of people waiting for their chance to be part of the league, right? So I figured there's no chance. Got to do some stuff in Tier 2 and like China and stuff, and that was all great. But yeah, when the Overwatch, when Valorant closed beta came out, I was casting talents 3 days into the closed beta. And tried to stick with Europe as much as I can, but not only have the First Strike and VCT formats been tough, but Ignition series as well has been insanely competitive with talent, all of the agencies coming in way back when as well. So it's been a grind, but I got a chance in North America, which I then lost straight away again at the start of this year. So it's been a roller coaster.
Let's circle back to this, Ryan. Can we circle back? Obviously, you know, you were a name that I sort of brought up last week when we discussed region locking, right? And that you had some success, obviously, casting North America. Now, this is a decision that we've seen now with VCT and region locking that directly affects you as a caster based in Europe, not casting European Valorant.
Right. To give context, I don't mind revealing this as well. In January, I worked 6 days, which, you know, for the the rates that we've been discussing, I was on those rates, and that's a good amount of work, right? Doing the Winter Championship and then 2 days for Red Bull, who I fought for to get SEMO in casted, to get a producer, and to get us all paid. Like, I put in the effort to make sure that that happened, right? Because they wanted those open qualifiers broadcasted. I have not casted anything in February. I am not down to cast anything in February. I've gone from, you know, making effectively full time's wage doing casting to not making anything at all, just based off this decision. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm like shoehorned in or should be doing VCT in North America, but considering like what I've done for First Strike with Nerd Street and stuff in the past, I think it does a better shout for me doing North American VCT than Europe, because Europe not only is stacked with talent, don't get me wrong, but there's not a B stream. A lot of these games aren't even broadcasted. And even then, when they have that talent, it's always like, you look at something like Nerd Street Gamers. How many people do you think they employed overall, Vansili? Like 12 people?
Yeah.
Something like that. And it's 5 in Europe.
And even then, as much as we kind of like critiqued about the community caster thing in North America, you guys don't even have that opportunity to do that in Europe to get any type of like exposure for any up and coming casters that wants to get known or wants to be known in Europe.
And now I'm in this position where you sort of mentioned it with Avril last week as well, where I can't cast a lot of events in Europe now because my rates are too high from all of the stuff I've done in North America. So,
which, by the way, isn't that high, right? It's just that you have a respectable floor on your rate and you won't go below it.
It's kind of like, we want you to do a full day's work for what you would usually charge for, well, not even a half day. Maybe we want you to do the best of 3 final. This is the rate we'd give you. And you could kind of go, all right, if it's just like a couple of hours work, I can accept that. If you're working out the calculations of, if this is a full day rate, how much is it per hour? Okay, like, I've been able to do this stuff with like YouTube and brand deals and integration, so that came kind of naturally. But even then, I think Vansili and I have had discussions, because I think it was you that brought me in to do Pulse for the first time. So thanks for that, Vansili.
That one got paid. that one got paid. That one got paid.
Insane,
like, Vansili like helped me with my rate then, and it was a third of what I charge now. I'm not going to go into that specifically, but I remember at that point being like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. And now I'm kind of like, you can't accept that kind of thing. So in short, I am sort of in this weird ground where it sounds horrible, but I'm waiting for like a chance for like challenges for somebody to like not so much slip up or get booked out for another game in some cases. I don't have the luxury like I did with First Strike, where, all right, there's no chance it's going in Europe. I could do North America to, you know, earn a bit of money, get a bit of experience, just get those reps in at casting. I can't do that. So I'm just playing with my dick all day, basically watching these scenes like play out. It's heartbreaking. And it also fucks with some of the North American casters as well. Like, because I've been duoing with people like SEMO and all that kind of thing. Now they need to find other duos, and they're struggling to find the right people. So it's even screwing with people within their own regions.
Yeah,
Ryan, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything from Riot or EOS that sort of explains this decision? Have you had any sort of information or guidance about why this is happening?
Not really. Bok kind of talked about a couple of things. Like, my assumption was they want to do what they did with First Strike in Europe, have it out of a studio, which would be cool, but also that would be for Masters. Clearly that would be for Masters. At which point, if they turned around to me and said, we're going to be doing it out of a North American studio, I'd be like, okay, fine. I never expected to fly there anyway, but to stop me from getting involved in any step of the process when it's all online, based off the fact that, oh, we want Masters to be done on a LAN, clearly that's just a bit odd. I get the whole, if they want a franchise, they want to find talent. But again, LEC, how many people are American over there? There's a lot of like counterpoints to all of the reasonable arguments you could make. And so I'm just hoping that they turn it around, you know?
And we're having to make the arguments with ourselves. Like, we don't even, we're literally having to create straw men to argue with, because we don't actually know what the rationale is for any of this decision making. Something I was just thinking about as well. This just occurred to me, and I don't want to take up any more time to talk about me stuff, but I've heard a lot of commentators are actually taking less money for doing online gigs, right? I just want to make it very clear. Put me into one box real quickly. I'm ready for my close-up director. Don't ask for less money just because you're working online. The product of work that you as a commentator have to put out on an online broadcast as opposed to a LAN is the same, if not harder, right? Tournament organizers online already aren't paying for your food. They're not paying for your travel. They're not paying for your accommodation, right? They get you. You have to make sure that you have the right equipment. You have to make sure that your connection's working. You have to handle everything else. And the quality of your work arguably has to be better because you don't have a ton of graphical assets, videos to rely on during the broadcast. You don't have a crowd behind you to back you up. You have to do so much more fill. You have to do so much more prep, and you have to do so much more to make the broadcast pop without all of those elements. So really quickly, just an aside, don't fucking ask for less money just because it's an online broadcast. The quality of your work has to be arguably better. Don't be dumb cunts. All right? All right. Anyway, where were we? Ryan, the reason we actually have you here, obviously, like the discussion about how, obviously how you're affected in Europe, so hopefully something that we can keep having, because I think that it's really important that there's not only accountability, but also that we're open about sort of our situations here. The reality is that not everyone is going to make it, but I'm pretty sure, those that have put in the hard work deserve to see that sort of acknowledged by Riot and by at least, getting an explanation as to how this stuff's going. Yeah, let's talk about Europe though, because, we talked earlier in the show about how it's just so hard to watch every scene. You're a grinder. I know you were working in NA, so you had to watch both North America and Europe, but I wanted to take a chance to, give us like an overarching blurb about what's happening in Euro VCT here, obviously, formats aside, and some of your thoughts before we start to dig into some of these individual games.
What's up with G2, Ryan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting, right? Because I think when you look at things like Sentinels and TSM 100 Thieves, I do think that just after First Strike, I think North America was a stronger region. I definitely think that the formats do inhibit Europe to an extent. But the one thing that EU did that NA didn't in some cases was they upgraded. David P left G2, Meadow left FPX. These are both changes that you didn't actually need to see any of these teams make. It was a real surprise, and for a lot of people still, they don't make an awful lot of sense, certainly with that G2 loss. But I think with that game in particular, G2 played a decent game, in all honesty, and NIP just played the living shit out of it, right? You've got everybody showing up. I did a video with like Mitch talking about like who are like the star players of the tournament that we've seen so far, at least. And you've got to look at the 4 teams that qualified. You've got NIP, you've got Wave, of all things. Nobody expected that. Monkey Business, and then you've got FPX. You could name the whole NIP roster because everybody played exceptionally. And I think you really need to look at those players like Chihuahua, who constantly clutched out, Jadi. This was really the only good map from G2. And I think if you watch this back, you really get a handle on how these guys play, because G2 are just massive bullies. You can't play passively against them if you're defending, because they will just take that space for free. But they will use utility in such a way that they force you to take a fight against them. And a lot of those fights, they just tend to win because they're mechanically better. In this case, NIP took those fights, and NIP won those fights time and time again because they're exceptionally nutty when it comes to their aim. I don't think Zeke played particularly well in those kind of areas, but in all honesty, this was just another great performance from NIP. If they had to play this best of 3 again, I'm pretty sure it would have gone differently. I'm still sold on the fact that G2 is the best team in Europe, but the competition level is so high now, especially with NIP performing at the moment, that anybody could take it. The real thing that we needed was double elim, because if we had double elim, G2 would have qualified over like Monkey Business or whoever the hell else.
Wait. But for storyline purposes, what if G2 didn't qualify and they lost again? Do you see like how a best of 3 double elim actually adds way more to that story?
Right, exactly. Like it adds a sense of consistency because
it's reading a fucking 5-page picture book as opposed to a novel, because there's more content. There's actually more to watch.
It's depth of character, isn't it, really, if they come back? Like, look at Sentinels. They wouldn't be able to do what they did. They would have got knocked out. I think it was Sideshow that said they would have got knocked out to Serenity before they got to the closed qualifiers because it was a best of 1,
They're out.
And so, you need to see those teams come back, because you had the whole literal anime storyline of Shazam losing his mind on stream and then coming back and having his team full int the way to winning the grand final. That's how it went.
It's a fucking great story, actually, for that.
Exactly, right? But what you have for G2, sorry, you got to try again, but this time it's much worse. I can
Yeah.
imagine at a point with all of this, and I think I'm in a position where I want to be careful what I say because there's been loads of examples in the past where somebody has criticized something and then never got to work with a TO again in some cases. But I do think that if this continues to happen, if we don't see G2 go through, what is Carlos going to do? He's going to go straight to Riot and go, what the hell is this? We are going to, if you're going to franchise, we are going to buy into that. And I don't like what I see so far. Like, it's a great indication for what's coming, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I thought you were done with
That's
the long
fine, it's
pause.
fine.
I just want to make it just perfectly clear. We shouldn't be afraid to say best of ones are pretty much a detriment to competitive integrity and storylines and the betterment of Valorant. Us speaking out about it doesn't make us negative. It doesn't make us bad guys. We only want what's better for the scene. And
That's why we
I
care about the scene.
exactly. And I legitimately hope that anyone from Riot from the EU side, if they're watching, I hope that they don't look at it like, look at these assholes telling us how to do our job. I want them to be like, look at these assholes. They actually have kind of a point. Let's think about this and make Valorant better. But go ahead, Ryan, man. That was
It's
fun.
just like nothing sums it up better than what Sliggy said, where a better format and a better system in place for broadcast helps out literally everybody. It gives people opportunities to be on broadcast. And, when you look at the track record for Europe as well, when it comes to talent, which you have to, Pansy Hypok, yep, definitely fair enough. Mitch, definitely fair enough with the amount he did for Ignition. Banks is a whole nother story. But then you got Yinsu, who, as well as been making a lot of great content in there, deserve to host the event. But then you've got Jonas and Lofar, and I love these two guys, and I think they make some really good content. But what does that say if you've been like a caster in the scene covering Europe and you want to cover Europe and content creators get it over you and they're not necessarily clued? Like if you're on an analyst desk as well, you need to know the teams and the players and stuff. And so, like, again, it's one of those things where I didn't expect to be doing First Strike at all. And so I saw this and I was kind of like, well, like, Riot don't owe me anything,
Yeah.
But it does put you in a position where it's kind of like, what else can I do when this situation is like playing out in front of you? And even as a content creator, right? Like I could try and leverage Hitscan. I try not to because I'd like to think that I would get on a broadcast off my own back and skills as opposed to look at this massive fucking YouTube channel I have, right? Like nobody wants to be that guy, but that's just kind of like broadcast and talent in 2021 and 2020.
Yes, it is. It is. I also think that, as an aside, I think that sometimes esports broadcast is almost being tooled in like an influencer direction. Like, all respect, I think Jordan Fisher is one of the most talented people I've ever seen, but he's not a commentator. You know what I mean? He's definitely more on the content creation side of things, and he was also involved. Look, this happened in Overwatch as well. It's very common for developers to use content creators with large followings. They want to leverage that reach and involve them. Like we used Tim the Tatman for so many things. I mean, I think we were almost planning to have him on the desk at the grand finals. We had Stir, we had Huck involved in, early Overwatch broadcasts who were brought in over. A lot of, really competent commentators. This is something that happens. Esports used to be the marketing budget of a lot of games.
Yes.
Now that marketing budget gets put alongside esports and sometimes in tandem with it. So it's a bit of a murky one to sort of to navigate. Especially when we're deciding who deserves to be working on what show, and it's and there's always a risk of gatekeeping. In the past, like, because I'm a bit of a purist as a play-by-play commentator, and I'm really I'm really technique and craft focused. I'll be honest with you right now, I was pissed off when Monty and Doa came to the Overwatch League and were instantly considered the #1 casters when I'd been casting that game for years, but I just had to prove that I was good enough to stand amongst them. Right? This is this is what you have to deal with. This is what you have to deal with as a commentator, though. Like, we have to do it.
And it's going to happen in Valorant. It is going to happen. We've got Tasteosis coming in, and like the game knowledge wasn't quite there for those guys. But if there's casters like at my level that do like the Nerd Street, win the championships and stuff, if you are one of those people and you're not shit scared at the fact that these big guns are starting to come in, that is just like the first ship of many that are about to sail into this game. So you've got to grind in. I think a lot of the stuff that you said last week is a penny or whatever to what the reason why we haven't seen a lot of these bigger guns come in. But I was doing events that D-Man was trying to do in Europe. Like that's scary competition, right? Like it's such a difficult scenario.
He can't get those events.
No, of course he can. Like I remember there was an event that I was tentatively down for, but I said no, we're gonna get Jacob and D-Man in, and there's no other budget left to do anything else. And it's like I can't be upset at that. You know what I mean? I'm like, well. fuck me, I guess I can't do much about that. Move on to the next one. And so, just as like an aside as well to Lofar and Jonas, Jonas was exceptional on that broadcast. I was blown away with how great he was and how great he is. And from my understanding, he wants to continue doing that. Clearly, Lofar does because he's doing challenges. So it's great to see that it isn't just a one-off thing that they're hoping to do, that they are genuinely passionate about being involved. So power to them. And I don't want my chance to come in at the expense of somebody else, really. And I think that was another thing that came into the conversation where I think Pansy on Reddit got criticism of not dedicating full time to Valorant, and that kind of came from my perspective of it was like a bastardized version where I said, even in the Twitch chat of the episode last week, that I don't like the fact that First Strike talent is coming in to do the first week of challenges. I feel like there's a great opportunity for other people, not including me. You've got Vince, who can't do anywhere else in the world right now. You've got people like Tom Biz. There's other casters other than me that should get a foot in the door to do some of these official Riot things. But now you can imagine the 5 that are doing a broadcast for challenges, doing masters as well, and then doing the challenges following. And so it is really difficult and certainly more competitive in Europe because there's just less opportunities. But I don't think that the talent that are involved, they're so good that it's going to be tricky. I don't want my chance to come at the expense of other people, right?
I think the last thing I'll say on this topic, I think we could actually have a splinter podcast to talk about this kind of stuff in general, right? And I hope that this segment sort of gets clipped and is another good example of maybe giving people a look into the life of broadcasters right now. I think there's a lot of fear about like a lot of these top broadcasters swooping into Valorant and taking the gigs and then just fucking off when they find something better. I can see that concern echoed amongst a lot of the people that are really putting the work in the scene right now. And of course, like I've been there. I was working Overwatch, and then like Sem Lamonti and Doa came in and got put straight in pole position as sort of top billing commentators, and I had to deal with that. It does happen. That's actually they earned that. They actually earned that in previous titles. They did.
Right.
And that's what people just need to understand. That people out here grinding right now. I mean, guys talk to me like, yeah, man, I've been grinding for like 12 months. Okay, I mean, I've been grinding for 12 years. I mean, who's counting? I mean, like people have short memories. People forget this stuff, and no one, the last thing I want to do is go, you come talk to me when you've done 4 years of radio broadcast before, you even got to do, like, this is not how we want to have a conversation. But I think it's important for a lot of those commentators to realize that, especially, there are a lot of COVID casters, right? There are a lot of commentators that picked up the trade because for whatever reason, they were stuck inside of the pandemic, wanted something to do. Maybe they lost their IRL jobs and were trying to find a revenue stream, which is a really bad idea to try and do that as a commentator. Like, don't. Be a day trader instead, for fuck's sake. Go buy GameStop if you want to make some money in
Should
in
I
this
do
sort
that
of
then?
situation.
Dogecoin,
you go do that.
Dogecoin.
Go and get that Dogecoin. Go $1, baby. Diamond hands to the moon. Anyway, look, we talk about casting, but I really want to talk about what we did see in the EVCT. So NIP, Fun Plus Phoenix, Wave Esports, and Monkey Business, they all advance to the closed qualifier 2 bracket. I mean, first of all, Team Liquid, I mean, that's brutal. I mean, we saw them really put up quite a show against G2 quite recently. And now Fun Plus comes out of nowhere. I mean, they weren't included in the Red Bull Homeground tournament, right? They come and just fucking remind everybody where they've been and what they've been up to.
And I think for this first map, like Haven, Liquid were a better team. They should have won that if it wasn't for just huge individual mistakes. And honestly, just a bit of unluckiness when it came to timings of peaks and stuff like that. People going into this, I've seen people calling for Eccles' head again. It's like, have we not fucking learned this from First Strike, just how this team can do? And they're playing up against FBX, who, considering G2 lost against NIP, at least are looking the most in form at the moment, right? So they've lost to G2 in the Red Bull Homeground final. They lost to Heretics in First Strike, who then went on to win the event. And then they lost to FBX, who at least is looking like the most cohesive team at the top. You can't be mad at this team, especially when they lose on such obvious stuff that Sliggy can at least go, yeah, this is what we need to work on. Our attacking side on these maps is clearly not good. We can put in some attempt. But at least they're trying stuff with the addition of Sky. Soulcast is a huge run of form currently at the moment.
Yeah, after he got so much criticism, around First Strike.
It's just such an unfortunate thing, really, when you sort of look at the seeding of this, right? If it's a double elimination again, would they sort of go up against Wave, who had an exceptional run against Fnatic? Sure, but can they replicate that? Probably not. And so you could be in a position where NIP, where G2, Team Liquid, and maybe even Fnatic, if they got another chance, could qualify when they really should be based off form. Obviously, if they lose these best of threes on a consistent basis, they don't deserve to be here. I mean, look at Guild. They were awful. But you've got to sort of at least treat this with a little bit more of a safety net, because double eliminations in this part of the tournament, at least, is a necessity, especially when we get to the next week coming up where you're qualifying for Masters and then Masters itself. If Masters is a single elim, much like First Strike was, again, you learn nothing about the scene. It's so difficult to go, this team is better than that team, because we don't get to see them play. Even when they do play, it's a best of one, is broadcasted. And then when they do play in a best of three that's broadcasted, it's just one game. Like, we've seen G2 play against Nip like 5 times recently, which is fine. But I want to see Nip play up against Fnatic. I want to see him play up against FPX. I want to see the Emil Doombros matchup. But we can't, because it could be months before we see these two teams play off.
Hey, Ryan, I have a super serious question, and don't try to be too political with this, all right? Because it's actually very serious. FPX joined EU, and I crowned him. I crowned him second best in EU. I love FPX. I still think they're second best in EU, right? You take a look at Liquid, and they fell off. But now, looks like they got that second breath. Yeah, they fell off for getting that qualifier. What's the urgency on them qualifying with this second VCT? And what do you think is to come if they don't? Because I feel like this is definitely a scenario that we're going to be discussing in the future if things don't get better. Because, I mean, it's the elephant is in the room, baby.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Scream on your roster and he is the MVP, even when they lose in a series like that, playing that consistently, you've got to treat this very sensitively. And at least a good thing is, you know, Soulcast obviously kind of spit his dummy out with the Yinsu stuff before. Came out and apologized, put on a good performance at Red Bull, best response he can have. And Eccles clearly understands the gravity of the situation. He's on Team Liquid, he's the IGL, and if he's bottom fragging, he knows and he's admitted that it's just not enough, that his number could be up if he doesn't put in those performances. So it's not like Team Liquid are ignorant to the scenario. It really does depend on who they come up against, right? They could get Heretics in the first best of one in the qualifiers. And so you can't really be too upset at them if they fail to qualify in those kind of things either.
I feel like Team Liquid for me is almost like the storyline of Cloud9 Blue. Like Team Liquid being Fish 1, 2, 3, Cloud9 Blue being like Tens and Friends. And then whenever they join into a Cloud9 or a big org, they're always falling short, where Cloud9 Blue has never really won anything. But when they have to face against teams, they're always facing against some tough opposition where, you know, you lose. It's like you're almost there, but you can never really reach it yet.
It's heartbreaking.
Exactly. And that's the same scenario where you have like Tens that's in that roster versus like Scream that's in the roster for Liquid, where Tens can kind of be like the MVP. If he doesn't pop off, the team loses. If Scream doesn't pop off, the team potentially loses, right? So it's a tough spot to be where you want to be right now in Team Liquid. And when you're looking at this top 8 right now, they had to play against arguably one of the top 3 teams in North America before we got into First Strike, with FPX being in that team. So I don't think you could discredit a lot from Liquid's performances or just Liquid as a whole right now, because then again, this team looked very, very good in homegrowns for Red Bull, right? And they continue to look very, very good. Versus FPX, yes, they lost in 2 maps.
You can look good.
Both of those maps went fucking double OT.
Okay, you can look good, but shit, if you lose, you lose, man. Like, come on, man. Like, you know what? You get, like, I'm trying to find a perfect analogy, but looking good isn't good enough. Like let's look at the NBA. Like, if you're a team that always hits playoffs and you're always first rounded, is just looking good enough for you? I know these players want to win. Not just Scream either. All of those players want to win. Looking good doesn't cut it. Something's going to happen, because if you keep missing the big dance, then what's the point of even competing if you're trying to get to the highest level? You want to get to the top. So why even settle for less, man? You have the best individual player in the fucking game on your roster. Take advantage of that, okay? Something needs to change. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe mindset, roles. I don't know. I love Liquid, and I want to see them thrive, man, but something has to happen. I don't think by just telling them you're looking good is good enough, because they haven't really accomplished what they can accomplish with the potential that they have on this roster.
Okay. I mean, they lose, look, again, in perspective, they lose 13-15, then 15-17 over 2 maps. So yes, they need to do better, but they're not as far off of better.
They're not.
There,
and then we wouldn't.
Almost there.
They're there.
I think it's more like the problem with this team is that it's bit them in the ass really badly. And you look at teams like NRG, LG in North America, the reason why they're so good is because they played in literally everything they could get their hands on. I think there was a bit of ego very early on in the Ignition events for Team Liquid where they didn't want to show their hand. And it took them literally months to get Scream onto a role where he's playing Jet and now looks like one of the best Jets within the region, which, is a smart move, but it took a while for it to come through. The luxury that we're missing is just multiple tournaments. If we had a home ground every month, then you could sort of see that momentum build up, that experience more than anything, because clearly that's what it is. We see Team Liquid scrimming and they may have good results, for example, but you put them in an official, they make some horrendous mistakes, as we saw in that tournament, right? So what they need to do is just get that experience on the stage. It's very difficult. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a fairground in an online scene as well. But it's just what this team could do in the future. Also, you have to bear in mind in North America, you've got Cloud9, Counter-Strike players falling from the ceiling into people's rosters at this point now because the scene is seemingly falling apart when it comes to players moving over. Europe doesn't have that. The scene is pretty cushy there. And what, Team Liquid were playing with Yugi at some point? Is that a huge signing for them necessarily to make up for rocking the boat a little bit? Who's to say that if they drop Eccles, that Soulcast, Cryptics, the whole team just goes, we don't want to be a part of this roster anymore.
It'll be another Cloud9 T1 situation.
Okay. Let me say this. So, you know what, Vance? You have a big point. You have a huge point. I'm sorry, I was thinking about this the whole time. Vance,
it's really big, Vance.
You follow.
It's
okay, but hear me out.
Big point.
Vance, you followed Rainbow Six. And this is the same scenario. In NA, Space Station Gaming, they were a top 4, top 5 team. They had more ties than wins and losses. That means that every game against a top team, they would tie it. It doesn't matter. They were always there. And people were like, oh, we like them. They're almost there next season. But guess what? The same shit happened. Just because you're looking good doesn't mean success is going to come. Sometimes those ties and those close losses, they are what they are, losses and ties. It doesn't matter if they were close or far. At the end of the day, it is what it is. But guess what Space Station did? They brought on Canadian, and now what are they? They're world champions. Sometimes it takes that one small change. I'm not saying Team Liquid needs a team change, but something has to change. Just a pat on the back isn't good enough. Almost winning all the time is losing all the time.
I mean, it's going to hurt all the more for Team Liquid, right?
It's
like,
losing.
I imagine after those lot that they're going to want to light a fire up under their ass again. And clearly they can't, because Soulcast has now become one of the best second entries within the region. And
Soulcast
he's playing
is sick.
Sky pretty much full time. Like, that's a Super Saiyan, like, light up when it comes to anybody. And he's playing underneath Scream and still looking good. Like, Christ, that's a big upgrade. It's going to be tough with Eccles. I think it's going to be tough with Team Liquid overall with how they're playing comps, but at least they're providing something a little bit different. It's just we don't have the data points. We don't have the entries to know how would Team Liquid face up against X, Y, and Z team. I think we could say that they're a top 8 team in the region comfortably. Are they top 5? Are they top 3? We will not know for months. We might not even know by the end of Masters, depending on how these matchups go. Who's to say that Wave Esports, again, just get an easier seed? I'm not trying to discredit what happened to them, but you still kind of feel that they go through it, have an easier time, and then make it to the final. Hell, some people were arguing that Heretics had that in some cases, which when they played up against Team Liquid and G2, how can you say that at that point?
I don't know how you say that.
I love Ryan on the show, yo. Bring him back.
Listen,
more.
I tell you what here's what shaped NA Valorant in the last few months. It was the back-to-back Complexity Invitational and the NSG Winter Championship. Yep. That is what gave those tier 2 teams those reps, that stage time that Ryan is talking about, to now be the teams that are actually fucking qualifying through the VCT, right? Like the X-Sets, the Luminosities, the NRGs, the Genjis of the world. Yep. Those are the teams that were just out there, like, playing for 10K and just, doing their thing. Whereas, TSM are on a fucking holiday. Right. That makes a big difference right now with the scene in flux so much. You take a week off, you take a huge hit to your performance.
Yep. That's.
Let's move on. Though. We've got to get through a couple of these other games, because one of the weirdest looking games there is Monkey Business 2 or OG 2-0 over Guild. Now, I actually watched this one. We see that Rare EU Reina come out. Guild, what is going on with Guild?
Nuts. I think there's a pretty logical explanation to this, because if you watch this game, you will see, I'll be honest, how Valorant shouldn't be played.
Wow.
Fundamentals were awful for this team, and they lost to a team that honestly embarrassed themselves against Liquid in the Red Bull home ground with the whole what AKM said and the way that they performed.
Yeah.
Guild played like this too. Guild did not play well, and you've got Safe, who I would argue Safe is like sick. from Sentinels. Very flexible, very strong. Maybe not the first name you pick up when it comes to like MVP and the impact potential, but he can play everything the team needs. He's stuck on Sentinel role, literally like the killjoy for the most part. And it just feels like such a shoehorn in. It's just not a good look when you have one of the brightest talents and you're putting him on a role that, I'll be honest, anybody can realistically play at any point. And so I feel the main reason is that they've got this new roster together. They've just got a coach. I think they went into home ground and this week of challenges to just drop the chips and see where they fall, honestly. See what they need to work on and go from there. I don't think that this is indicative of what we'll see in the future for Guild, or at least I hope not. If this is the same with a safe playing the Killjoy in Challengers 3 or Masters 2 or whatever, then I'll be really concerned about what this team is going to do, because they all looked awful.
But
Ryan's sitting.
That's what I'm thinking, man. It's like there's not that many opportunities for any of these teams to put themselves out there and practice strats or anything like that too. Because when you're looking at Rainbow Six, for example, Veli, it's a weekly league. They have matches pretty much every week, and it's confirmed. And they have one team that they have to study against, and then they're going to practice for that. Now, as now it's very similar in VCTs in North America, but for Europe, it's the only platform where they could actually try everything they've practiced is actually going through the gruesome BO1 qualifiers to see if it's going to work out or not. And you don't even know who the fuck you're facing when you're going through these brackets, because the seeding's all over the place when you're going through. So you don't know who you're playing against. You don't know who you could potentially play against. You don't know how to prepare, what agents to come out, what map is going to be played.
Just full send. You just full send.
Exactly. It's like a gamble for all of these teams right now, which is why it's so hard to justify if a team is actually underperforming or overperforming at that point. Yes, you could, for me, you could definitely say like G2 and stuff are overperforming because they're always at the top there. But for all the other ones that are trying to grind, it's just, I don't know, man. It's so random going into the brackets playing against these teams.
I mean, that series as well saw AKM actually be really effective as an entry fragger. When beforehand, like I shit on him. He's like he's legitimately an IRL friend of mine. Like I legitimately would hang out with Dylan back when he was in LA. But like they didn't look very good initially.
Dylan.
They looked, we're cool like that. So I use his first name. Yeah.
Literally the copy pasta.
Y'all fucking mad. But yeah, he looked really good on the jet. Element actually, ironically, is plus 18 in KD, but -3 in first kills, the first death. So he is literally the cleanup crew over the course of that series and plays the Reyna in a really similar way, in my opinion, to what we see from Thief, right? Over in NA, right? Really, really mechanically nasty, very skilled. Is not opening up so many of these fights. Kind of like a second entry in many ways, but the amount of clutch rounds that we saw from him across the series, he has 2 4Ks in that series, and sort of just a really, really impressive performance across that series in general. Unco looks great on the smoker role as well. He was a support player back in Overwatch and didn't get to do much shooting at all. He played Ana and tried to have some sort of impact. But these guys are actually professional shoot mania players, right? Before they got into Overwatch. Shoot mania. So yeah, that is a hardcore arena shooter.
Yeah, 3 versus 3, man. It was dope.
It's fucking
hard.
Yeah.
They are shoot mania world champions.
Oh my
God.
Look at
EZK played that, by the way.
He did?
Yeah, and XP3 from Complexity. They were playing Shootmania.
Skilled gamers, man.
Yeah. So these guys, they don't fuck around. They're very sharp, and I think that Valorant suits them a lot more. I also think that Tvik reminded me a lot of how we were so impressed with Artis's utility usage on Icebox on the Sova. He is functioning really impressively as a caller on this team. And a lot of the time, especially those A-site hits on attack, we really saw Tvik get a heck of a lot of value from the Sova, right? Understanding how to really get shocked up positioning, force players off positions, which is impressive considering maybe Guild's not super easy to do your homework on, but he definitely comes into that game, looks like he's very well prepared. And I think that impact that he has at the Sova role really gives him the win. So yes, Guild looked pretty shit. But I have to eat my words and say the Monkey Business are looking much better than they did previously. But
and they beat Entropic as well, and Entropic beat Heretics.
Yeah, exactly. Can someone tell me who the fuck Wave Esports is? I have no idea. I admit to being ignorant.
Yeah,
I'm ignorant to this.
It's a German org. They're really good in Fortnite for some reason. I think they had some like 16-year-old kid win like, I don't know, like $2 million, probably knowing the prize pools in that. But this is a team that's been around for quite some time. Wave have put on a couple of events themselves, but they've looked stronger. I casted them in this like level regional clash for the DACH region, which is known for being super weak. It's got Big in there, and Big are not a very good team in Europe either. And so I've seen a bit of Wave, and they've changed up a little bit on how they play. They had Muri, who was their Raze player, now on Silver full time. They moved him to the Raze, obviously. And then they moved Nico, who was the Breach player, to Sky. And oh my God, for some reason, nobody can deal with it. Muri was not only on a tear this game, but he was on a tear throughout the whole of the qualifiers that we didn't get to see. This guy was nuts. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that they can replicate, but they really took advantage of a Fnatic team that, whilst it's great to see them under that name, they have to adjust quickly to making sure that they keep that name. I'm not saying that they should be dropped. Not that at all. Don't come after me like people did for Yinsu. But what I am saying is that Fnatic, it's a tall thing to lead under. And I think a lot of teams, when they get signed, they have to adjust quickly to this new weight on their shoulders, right? That they are now Fnatic, and they need to get those results. It doesn't really matter now if they lose to something like Wave, but if you get into that wrong mentality and you can't pick up a win, for example, in a tournament like this, then that's just going to weigh on you more and more. The community is going to meme on you more and more. Like Team Liquid was loved when they were Fish 1, 2, 3. Now people love to watch them lose, right? So Fnatic do need to be a little bit careful of that. I don't think it's going to happen, but it was interesting to see them kind of fall apart a little bit to a very surprising team in Wave.
I think that I've seen this happen before. I think for a team like Fnatic, and if you get to see much of the game, I think I got to gloss over it briefly. Wave looked pretty awful on Bind. I thought that Fnatic were just going to completely roll them. I think then Fnatic just run out. They run out of gas across that series. Fnatic look really bad on Split. They get ground out, and I think they get no defensive rounds. They just get rolled on attack.
Correct.
There as Wave just sort of pick up this sort of momentum. And we are seeing Mo obviously playing the Reyna on Split there, and I don't feel like there was like a ton of value gained there for Fnatic. It's so interesting, the cross pollination we're seeing. This is just as an aside, is NA's picking up the Sage a bit more, and then EU's picking up the Reyna a little bit more, and both regions are still struggling to incorporate those two agents respectively into their compositions. But this Muri guy is pretty insane on the Raze, like you were saying before. So okay, I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see this from Wave, but obviously Fnatic, it always looks a little bit embarrassing to them after getting picked up by this sort of roster and then sort of stumbling. But you have to hope that they tighten the bootstraps and come back a bit stronger. Do you think that do you think that any of our top 4 are going to really struggle to qualify? I know it's best of 1. I know it's not double Ilium, but are there any fears about the teams that don't make it through sort of continuing to struggle?
So I think with the qualified teams, you still have question marks over all of them. FPX more so because the first time that we saw them with Dimasic, it was a really good result to beat Liquid, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they played particularly very well. Dimasic especially got shut down a lot, and he is meant to be coming in as a Meadow replacement, which I read it as Meadow is way too passive of a player. We want somebody that's good at setting up his own plays and being super aggro, like a Proto is probably the best example in the world right now, but Team Heretics is Pora, just that they will just run across the map. If you look at like heat maps and stuff for Pora within the first 30 seconds, he's like 2 fucking maps beyond at that point. He's just holding W. Like you're playing on Haven, he's on Bind, ready to sort of take the whole site. But it didn't come down. But that's mostly because Team Liquid didn't let Dimasic have anything. His lurks were constantly shut down. And so, speaking to Doombros a little bit afterwards and sort of seeing his tweets and stuff, they were like, oh, we have a lot to work on, right? So I think that every team could get upset here. You obviously have to look at Wave and Monkey Business and go, yeah, I don't know about that. It depends on who they run into, obviously, because they could just run into Fnatic and Guild again, and it's the whole GTA meme all over.
It's gonna be fun.
But it really does depend on how it gets seeded, because it's based on, it's not like, obviously seeding matches aren't a good thing in Nerd Street Gamers, but at least it sets up different interactions. Even with teams going down from the upper bracket to the loser bracket, they switch it around so you're not playing on the same bracket side, for example. In Europe, it's the 560 bracket all the way down. So you could literally see who's going to run into who, and you kind of go, oh, well, Heretics have to beat Entropic, Monkey Business, and then they need to run into Guild later on. You could see it come to pass. And so it would be nice to get to a position where the teams that go to this qualifying game, like the ones that we saw broadcasted, are seeded based on previous results. That's even more difficult when you have new rosters coming in, you have new players coming into certain rosters too with some of the moves that we've had. It's just, you were never going to get a strong seeding thing. So whilst it's easy to rag on Riot in this retrospect, somebody's constantly going to get screwed over. Even Heretics in First Strike got screwed over in their seeding. They managed to make it work, but they had a hell of a time trying to do it.
All right, that pretty much caps our discussion on the European VCT. We were saving, I guess, the best potentially for last. Well, at least they had more than best of ones to play through. It is the NA VCT